I'm Stila Webb.
And I'm Shuvom.
I'm going to write my first fiction novel this year.
And I'm going to film it.
And we're going to release one video every week.
And if you keep up with Stila's word count, by the end of 2017, you'll have...
Libro Hoc Anno.
Anno? Welcome to week 12 of our writing adventure.
Happy St. Patrick's Day!
Today we're talking about dialogue.
I think dialogue is the soul of a character. More so than how you describe them or what they do, what a character says is really how you see into what they're about. So we got a fun lesson for you guys today, and we even got a special guest from our writers group,
Inventor of the capital letter game,
and a longtime writer of the macabre and Lovecraftian fiction, Chandler Gabel.
Hello.
So it's going to be a little crowded here today. This is our first three-person video, but we're happy to have Chandler here.
Yeah, thanks guys. Great to be here. I am here today because I am passionate about dialogue. I would marry dialogue if a bigamy were legal in New Hampshire. We have people in the State House working on that.
So, Chandler, what is your number one rule about dialogue?
What is my number?
Right there. It's right there. That's why we have the board.
The number one rule of writing good dialogue is that when people are talking to each other, they're not talking to each other for the purpose of exchanging information. Often you, the author, are trying to get information to your readers through this dialogue, but when the characters are talking, that's not their goal. Each character has their own goal, and it may have nothing to do with giving the other characters information.
Right, and so when you have characters who are just exchanging information on camera, it looks very stilted. It looks kind of weird.
It looks forced. The characters are just like puppets, and you, the author, are pulling their strings, making them say what is needed to move the plot forward. Yeah, we have an example here. We have two characters, Bob and Steve, and for your benefit today, we're going to do a dramatic presentation. I will be inhabiting the role of Bob, and Shuvom will be putting on the mantle of Steve. Please enjoy. Okay, Steve, it looks like we have a neutron bomb to defuse. A Type 15 Hadron compressor.
But as you know, Bob, the Type 15 is one of the hardest to defuse. We have to watch out for extra trigger circuits.
Yes, I remember that being listed in our last briefing at bomb school. I am so nervous right now.
Especially since we only have 5 minutes to do it. Good thing we're the best in the business at this.
Yes, we are. Yeah, so there are a few things that I can point to specifically. You know, if we weren't reading this dialogue, would you be able to tell which character was saying it? If we just gave you a line and said, "Is this Bob or Steve?" How often would you get the answer right?
I would have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at the first line. Bob is telling Steve we have a neutron bomb to defuse. He tells him the type, and Steve goes, "As you know, Bob."
Bob and Steve already know this. They both know this, so there's no reason for one of them to be saying it to the other, right? They're just conveying information to the reader here.
Yeah. Yeah, the running joke we have in our writers group is the "as you know, Bob," when one character explains to another character something both characters should know, and it's just kind of pointless. And this whole thing is "as you know, Bob." So I remember that being our last briefing at bomb school, and so now you know they're bomb technicians.
Yeah, also, I managed to not laugh while saying bomb school, but it was difficult, and I want credit for that.
In the last two paragraphs, the author is just telling the reader that they have 5 minutes and that the people doing this are the best in the business. There's no show. Nobody talks like that. It's just bad.
They haven't earned that, right? We need to see they're the best in the business. The characters need to earn that distinction. They can't just say it.
So let's give them a different purpose besides exchanging information. Let's make it look something like this, where a lot of things are implied.
Bob lifted the metal case to reveal a glowing cylinder, then cursed.
Damn, a Type Hadron 15.
Steve grimaced and started unzipping his kit.
Welp, we're gonna earn our bonus today.
Or become splatters on the wall.
Less whining, more cutting.
Steve said, looking at the timer.
Oh, hell.
Said Bob, as his cutting tool winged off the access port, scratching the outer casing. Steve snorted.
Relax. Chicago was worse than this.
Bob sighed.
They're all worse in their own way. So that's a little bit better, right? We weren't quite as horrible that time.
Well, you can see that I love the last line, because that last line of Bob tells something about implies a lot about his past and his view on life.
Yeah, so what, I mean, what...
it's out!
Anarchy!
3 people is too many people!
Even fixing it this much, you can start to see that they're a unit that works together well, and the dialogue in this one tells you more about that relationship than anything in the previous dialogue did.
You feel like they existed before this scene was written. These are not just constructs or characters who we happen to be seeing at this moment in time.
Yeah. And if you noticed, what did we do there? Capital letter game. We've said Chicago was worse than this. So instantly your mind, you're instantly like, what happened in Chicago? I want to hear about that. It's an easy way to imply backstory without you knowing. We don't know what happened in Chicago, and we wrote it.
Another thing that's much better about this are the attribution actions, the things that people are doing as they're talking. It not only shows you who's talking, but it also gives you an idea of what they're doing and that they're competent in what they're doing.
Yeah, this is a... let's edit that out.
We'll fix that in post.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, this is another very important part of dialogue, attributions. Whenever you have something like Bob said, Steve said, etc., it's something that tells you who's saying the dialogue. That's an attribution, and doing those right is just as important as doing the dialogue itself right, and you're going to see those improving as we go through here.
Yeah, and in fact, so look at the second line here when it says Steve grimaced. The reason I put that in there, I could have had, "Welp, we're going to earn our bonus today, comma, Steve said," but I hate ending a powerful sentence with Steve said. So I took the Steve said out, and I did have, blah, blah, blah. I made Steve...
Staying in.
No. I made Steve have an action, and then because you get it on the same paragraph, you can know the whelp line comes from Steve.
It serves a dual purpose. Not only are we not getting buried in an amount of he says and she says, but now the characters can be talking while the action is moving forward.
One general rule that a famous author has is never to use any kind of attribution except for he said, she said. Don't use he exclaimed, she yelled, he hissed, he whispered. It's a very famous author. I can't remember the name.
It's Stephen King in On Writing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can have he said, she said, he said. My rule is actually to take as many of those out as we can and replace them by action, like you saw here.
But it was Lawrence Block.
Might have been Lawrence Block.
It was Lawrence Block's. I was
On
reading.
Writing.
It was no.
No, it was...
Lawrence Block talking about someone else actually.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah.
Hold on.
Yes.
And the author he's looking for is Dean Koontz.
Oh, Dean Koontz, yeah.
Yeah.
Koontz was the answer.
Dean Koontz.
Dean
everyone.
Koontz. He's the one who said, I only use he said, she said in my dialogue attribution.
And the reason that he does that is because if you say, like, Bob exclaimed or Bob said angrily, what you're doing is you're letting the attribution do the work that the dialogue should be doing. We should be able to tell by what Bob said, whether he was angry or excited or sad or whatever. Yeah, a few stage direction-y ones that show, like, how loud somebody is talking or something is okay, because it helps you imagine better in your head what's happening. But if you're trying to convey the attitude of the character by an attribution, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah, so shouted I use, yelled I use,
Yeah.
especially in firefights and stuff. But yeah, if you ever find yourself saying he said angrily or maybe even he growled.
He
Yeah.
snarled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of a way if you want.
Hey, I like snarled.
Oh, you were
It
saying...
works perfectly for shifters.
Eh. So now, this is going to be a hell to edit, but let's take this text that we had and make it even better. Let's give
Now
some...
with feeling.
Yeah. Now we're giving some feeling.
Bob lifted the metal case to reveal a glowing cylinder, then cursed.
Damn, a Type Hadron 15.
Steve grimaced.
Good thing we brought the voltage suppressors.
He unzipped his kit, not looking at Bob.
This time.
Only 5 minutes left. Can we not?
We could also not clean the voltage suppressors after we use them.
Oh, hell.
Bob said as his cutting tool winged off the metal.
That was one time, and Chicago was fine.
Steve snorted and pulled on his glove.
Tell that to Tulsa.
Ooh, snap.
Okay, so now, I mean,
Those are some fresh green beans.
this dialogue, there's definitely some subtext going on.
This is a good example of how characters can have goals other than conveying information to each other. Like, you can tell that Steve has an axe to grind with Bob here, because Bob didn't clean the voltage suppressors, right? So
And Bob never cleans the
He
voltage
never
suppressors.
does it,
You can
so-
tell just from the dialogue, he never cleans the voltage suppressors.
So Steve's goal here is not just to get the bomb defused, it's also to get Bob to clean those bleeping voltage suppressors just one single time. And you know that's just one goal a character can have. He's trying to get Bob to do something, right? But you know, a character can also be trying to hide something. You know, they can be trying to
Mislead someone.
They can be trying to mislead somebody. They can be trying to they can be trying to
Convince
actively
themselves.
not communicate through what they're saying. You know, actually, Scott Adams from
Yeah.
Dilbert says that a big secret of the source of his humor is that he writes about people saying exactly what they think. And if you look at Dilbert, you'll see that that's exactly what it is, right? It's just people in an office setting saying exactly what's in their heads. And the reason that's funny is because nobody does it.
Yeah.
one big reason for characters to talk that we don't really cover in this example is that a lot of times characters are trying to convince themselves that they're right about something.
Ooh.
Particularly the villains. Like, a good villain is not just a villain that goes around laughing evilly and destroying things, right? A good villain has a philosophy, and he believes he's doing God's work. So, a villain like that, if he has any, like, internal insecurity about whether what he's doing is really a good thing, he's going to be talking a lot about how good it is and why it's good that he's doing these terrible things, so that not only are other people convinced, but more importantly, he can stay convinced himself.
Remember what we said about villains? They're the heroes of their own stories. And you can see that in Bob, as he tried to convince himself that he indeed cleaned them every once in a while.
Now we're going to move on to one of my biggest rules for dialogue, which is the idea of subtext.
Subtext!
Okay, so just stay right there. Trying to get. I think we didn't have 2 guest stars for today.
Dash!
Okay. So my key to dialogue is thinking of dialogue in 2 ways. There's the text of what people are actually saying, but then beneath it, like some sort of underwater boat, is the subtext. And your dialogue gets better the more subtext you have. At the basic level, if you just let everyone say what they mean, it's pretty flat and one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But subtext is what makes awesome dialogue awesome. What is the definition of subtext?
Subtext is saying something without actually putting it in words.
And one of my favorite examples of this actually comes from the Nero Wolfe series by Rex Stout. It's a book called In the Best Families, if you want to go and look it up. So Archie Goodwin has been hired...
References.
Yes, references. Archie Goodwin has been hired by a rich woman to find out whether her husband is stealing money from her. So he goes to a dinner party at her house and he mingles with the guests, and especially the husband. And then after dinner, while they're having cocktails, the husband comes up to him and says, "Hey Goodwin, you staying the night?" And Archie says, "No, I figure I'll get going this evening." And the husband says, "Oh, that's good. Yeah, the traffic back into New York City shouldn't be bad if you leave early, Goodwin." "Yeah, that's it, Goodwin. Leave early." And he walks off still holding his cocktail.
Yeah. So what I love about this scene is that Archie knows he's there to investigate the husband.
Yep.
The husband knows he's there to he's being investigated by Archie, but neither of them can say anything in public.
Yep.
So that's what gives the text its submarine flavor.
Yeah, if it was actually 2 guys talking about traffic, it wouldn't be worth putting in the book, right? What makes it good is the fact that they're saying things without actually saying them.
Do you guys want to talk about Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Or?
Oh, we can't talk about subtext without talking about Game of Thrones. So Varys, like the king's advisor in Game of Thrones, he's the ultimate subtext man, right? He's
Yeah.
pretty much every word that comes out of his mouth is subtext. He's always saying one thing, and it has some sort of terrible significance behind it that's not in the words.
Yeah, that's what makes some of those Game of Thrones scenes awesome, when 2 people are talking about killing each other out in public, but they can't come out and say, "I want to kill each other." If you want to figure out how to do subtext, if you've never done it before, here's the way I think about it. Think about trying to talk to someone in a crowded dinner party about something very, very important, but you don't want anyone else at the dinner party to know what you're talking about. Put that mindset in your 2 characters' minds, and there you have subtext.
I thought of sex there. I just
I mean,
thought
how
of
is
like
it
a married
different?
couple
How's
talking
it-
about they're going to go home and have sex, but without actually saying they're going to go home and have sex. They're talking subtext to each other that nobody else gets.
Like if they're like, "Do you want to get tomatoes tonight?"
Let's get some tomatoes.
Oh, I love those tomatoes.
Oh, nothing like tomatoes.
It's been a while since we've had tomatoes.
I just like to get them in my mouth and then suck all the juice out.
This is...
Now I'm just uncomfortable.
This is the making Chandler uncomfortable 101. Good job. Good job, Kitty.
Firm flesh.
All right,
with that
stop.
Sweet juice.
Stop. Now you're making everyone uncomfortable. All right.
Just lick out all the seeds.
What? So this is the last thing we're going to talk about. This is Stila's big dialogue tip. What is it?
Realistic versus unrealistic versus hyper-realistic dialogue. Realistic dialogue. What do you guys think that means?
Well, that would be like if you just went to a dinner party and turned the camera on and left it there for a couple of hours, right? You'd be seeing exactly the sort of thing that real people say in the real world. But is that what you actually want in your book, Stila?
No, it is not. There are too many unfinished sentences, dropped topics of conversation, whats, yeahs, filler words, dreck.
But it's good to go out and hear some realistic dialogue which is what Stila and I did this weekend when we went out and legally recorded some people filming dialogue here. So what we were doing was just going around listening to what people are saying,
Legally.
and just to get an idea of how people talk. And exactly like what Stila was saying, people we have an example, I think, actually.
We do. But why would you go out and listen to real people talk if you don't want to do it just like that? To avoid sounding unrealistic.
So here's an example of what realistic dialogue might sound like.
So I, got really serious and, told him to, chill out and stuff. I mean, really, why does he have to be so, mean anyway?
We were in the teen section of the mall, sorry. When people talk like that, they put a lot of ums and fillers, and it's stuff you would cut out and say, Susie said she was mad at Jeff.
Notice how many filler words are in this one little sentence.
So what are some other trademarks of realistic dialogue?
Saying things like opening conversations with, hey, how you doing? Answering the phone and starting with hello, hi, oh, I'm looking for so-and-so, oh, hold on, I'll go get them. Most of those are pointless. Unless you're doing it for a specific reason to show something specific, cut those out.
There's a lot of laughing in realistic dialogue. Things don't even have to be funny, and people will laugh at them. It's like conversational glue, but you don't want that in your novel.
Yeah.
Like I just did.
Yeah, there was a great Cracked video that talked about how every time Mulder talked to Scully, he never said, bye, I'm hanging up now. He would just say, oh my god, they're coming, and then he would hang up. And if you look at it from Scully's point of view, it's like, what just happened? So, in real life, people will say, okay, it was good, if you listen to people in the mall, okay, it was good talking to you, let's talk to you later, bye, thanks. All sort of stuff you cut out of a real book.
Yeah.
Or just make much shorter. Like, oh, alright, I'll talk to you later. Done.
Okay, so that's realistic dialogue.
Then you get unrealistic dialogue, which sounds basically like someone is narrating it to you, or like someone written it in an email and changed it 5 times to be just so.
Yeah, it sounds over-prepared, right? Because it was. The beginning writer was, going over and over this dialogue, and so what they end up is with something that sounds like it should be in an email or like a letter or like on a formal calling card with gold embossed letters, and not something that some character is saying to another. So Stila, do you have an example of that?
I have a really crappy example of that. I was extremely upset at Matt today and told him that. I do not understand why he is so mean to me on a regular basis.
Okay.
Nobody talks like that, ever.
You can imagine her emailing that to her grandmother, right? But you can't imagine
Complete
her saying
sentences, no ums, no uhs, no pauses, no emphasis, just ugh.
Yeah. So part of the reason I love writing dialogue is that you can break all the grammatical rules. You can have sentences of one word. You can have people just say as if, and that's good enough. So when you go too far away from realistic, you end up with this unrealistic robot speak. And the happy medium is somewhere in the middle in what we're calling
Hyper-realistic. It's dialogue that sounds much more believable and like someone could actually say it, but is way wittier than any normal person actually is.
It's how people wish they could talk. If you have a discussion, you think 10 hours later, gosh, I wish I had said that. That's probably what your hyper-realistic dialogue sounds like.
Yeah, you'll see it a lot in if you go watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like everyone almost talks like this. Same situation. Girl mad at boyfriend. Matt was a total douche today,
You clean them out?
and hung him out to dry.
Notice how much snappier and more concise that is. It gives you all the information you needed. Sounds kind of like what someone would actually say, but damn, that's witty.
Yeah, it's just really like distilled. So Tarantino does this. Who's the other guy we're talking about?
Buffy.
Yeah, Josh Whedon does this. You're taking the realistic dialogue and you're just distilling the best. And you're making everyone super witty without making them robots or perfectly formatted.
Transition!
Step number 1 is don't have 3 people on a video that's only wide enough for 2 people. But again, I think of dialogue as the king of character description. You can just describe a person, it's okay. You can show what they're doing, but when you really understand what they're doing is when they talk.
So your homework for this week is to take maybe a page that you've written of your story, cut out everything except the dialogue, and then work on it until you can tell who says each line of dialogue. Even though there are no attributions, there's no action happening, there's nothing on that page except the words. The voices of the characters need to be individual enough so that you know as soon as you see them speak who it is.
You might try this the first time you introduce someone to really set who they are, or you might try this in the fun and game section, where you all should be.
Again, Joss Whedon's really good at this. If you look at the lines given to the different actors on Serenity or Firefly, they're very different. Just how they say things and what they would actually say is very different, and you could almost take any line of dialogue and know who it is just from reading the dialogue alone.
Again, and your other homework is to keep eating those 500 words a day. You should be going through the fun and game section right now, the best part of your book. So if you have any questions, email us at hey@getrang.wang. Did you not know that was our email address?
No.
Yeah, it's a real email address. We don't know how we got that domain, but that's the last one they had left.
Because .com was taken, and .wang is by far the funniest other option. Who can forget .wang?
So until then,
Get writing.
.wang.
Hello.
Okay, I won't laugh this time.
Guten Tag. Did you really think you could kill me that easily?